guys, today we're going to transform a dollar store flower pot into something that is actually really nice to keep in your home or give as a gift. I actually designed this to be a Mother's Day gift, but with everything going on, we actually wanted this to be a class. We decided to do a video on it instead. So I just gave the listed supplies, and right now I am taking some modeling material by Prima, and I'm just using it in the decor molds that I have. All of my decor molds are Prima, and I do sell them on ravehomecollection.com. You of course can use the ones that you have. I really like these. These are two of my favorites. And I find that the modeling materials are really easy to work with. One of the downsides of the modeling material though is that it does crack as it dries. So when we glue it to the flower pot, which is a plastic flower pot, then it's gonna have some shrinking over time. And this would be true of whatever you put it on. I'm gonna paint it right away and not let it dry out. I'm doing this sort of as one long solid project. But if you didn't want the cracking, then you could use hot glue. These molds, you can actually literally just take your hot glue gun and fill them up. You could use caulking material, which would give it a little bit, as it dries, it would give it a little more flexibility. Or you could go one of my favorite routes, which is resin. Resin is probably my favorite route for using these molds typically, because they don't shrink, they don't crack, they pretty much are perfect, and it takes only about 10 minutes to do a mold. And honestly, sometimes it's not that much longer than when you're using the modeling material. However, I did want the cracking and the distressing on this. So you can see I've popped out one of them. They come out super easy. I didn't have to use any kind of baking powder, baking soda to coat my mold. It pops out super easy with the modeling material. And here I'm just using some Tite Bond wood glue. You could use, if you were wanting it to set more quickly, you could use the non-expanding Gorilla Glue. That works out really well as well. E6000 takes too long to dry, so for a project like this, it wouldn't be my ideal choice. And I'm going to use just some basic painter's tape to help hold this in place while it dries. It doesn't take very long for it to dry, so really by the time I get to the other side, I'm able to start painting it once I get everything done. This just kind of leaves me to not have to worry about it. Make sure that all the little ends stick down. You could probably use just about any kind of tape for this. And again, you could probably use hot glue if you wanted to on this, although I don't think the hot glue would stick well to the modeling material, because the modeling material is a little bit cold and kind of wet feeling. So it probably is not a good substrate for the hot glue. And I am just gonna keep making some. I think it took really about two and a half of these to get it worked all the way around my pot. And they're super easy to do, super easy to cut. And you may have seen these on dressers and other things. I know that Debbie's Design Diary has really good videos on using molds for dressers, and they're just phenomenal. I think my favorite one is the seahorse. If you haven't checked that out, you should for sure check that out on Instagram. And she does a video on YouTube as well with that one. And on those, she's using IOD, and here I am using Prima. But you see, it's actually easiest if you just literally roll them out of the mold. You just sort of use your fingers to push on the back, and they roll right out. And I'm just gonna glue it right on. Sorry, I was a little out of frame here. And you could do this with clay pots as well. In this case, I was using a dollar store one. I really wanted to do a dollar store project. I see a lot of dollar store projects on YouTube, and some of them are great, but I do find most of them are things that I wouldn't personally want to put in my house. And I wanted this to be like class worthy, that I could actually teach a class on it. And I also wanted it to be something that I would feel comfortable keeping in my house. And I don't know, I'm not really fond of like a lot of the cardboard things that feel so temporary. I like things that are going to be more permanent and less temporary. I'm a big upcycler, and so that means that I don't want a lot of disposable products. And I feel like a lot of the dollar store, Dollar Tree hacks that I see end up being things that are not going to last from season to season. This pot definitely should. It's plastic, and again, we're going over it with the modeling material. And once it's sealed and it's dried, it'll stay there. I could plant plants year after year in this. In this case, I'm not really I don't have a green thumb at all. I pretty much kill just about everything. So for me, I am just gonna put some fake plants in here. And again, those will last year after year as well. So now I've moved on to doing a little bit more intricate mold, and that's gonna go on the top. This is sort of a rose mold, and again, just more modeling material. It's nice and soft, it's easy to work with. I was using this with my granddaughter, who is 9, the other day, and it's stiffer than Play-Doh, but it kind of has a very similar consistency. It's a lot like Fimo clay, the consistency of Fimo clay, so it's a little stiffer to work with, but not difficult at all. I'm using a popsicle stick because I have tons of those. I have boxes of thousands of them at my disposal, but you could really, a credit card would be fine. And you don't actually need anything. I just find it makes nice clean lines. And what I'm doing here is just squishing it into all the edges, especially where I've lined them up together. And again, I'm a messy crafter. I love just sticking my fingers in the paint. And then, I don't know, did you ever do it as a kid? And now I do it as an adult. Letting the glue dry on your fingers and then like peeling it off like it's a second skin. It's a weird, fun sensation, I think. Although I'm confident these days, sometimes I might actually be taking some of my own skin off with it. My hands have gotten so dry from doing all of the crafting we've been doing lately and all the hand washing. My gosh, washing your hands over and over and over. I'm gonna have to start adding some lotion at some point because all this hand washing is definitely, and hand sanitizer is definitely not good for your skin. So you can see this has got little rose buds. And again, I'm just gonna tape it up. This was going to be one of the first projects we did when we opened the Rave Home Collection as a class. We were going to do it for, maybe a week or two before Mother's Day. And it just didn't happen. It was very hard. Our grand opening was set for March 24th. Of course, that came and went, and it was disappointing. But of course, you do what you have to do, and we were fortunate. We were one of the companies that did get PPP because of our staging company. We have a large payroll from the staging company, and so I really don't know if Rave Home Collection honestly would have made it through the shutdown without it, simply because we'd been in the building since December, and we just finally opened actually last Monday, which was May 7th, 6th, 7th, something like that, or not Monday, Thursday, which was like May 6th or 7th, something like that. So we were in the building for almost 6 months, paying rent, paying for renovations, paying for inventory, all of that without getting any revenue in the store. So I will say that was definitely very helpful. We were able to keep pretty much just about all of our staff. We did have to put a few people on furlough, and then they did end up being long-term losses, but we've hired some new people back in replacement. It's disappointing when you can't bring employees back after you don't really have much choice in letting them go, but it is what it is, and we power through and keep on moving on. So we are excited that at least we could do this as a DIY video, and perhaps classes will resume at some point. Now I am ready to start. I've got it all the way around the top, and I am finally ready to start making the flowers for the outside of the mold. And here again, I love these little roses. I stick them on just about everything, I think. And I don't know if you've played with the molds before. They're just so fun to use. And you, like I said, you could use resin even though the pot is round, because if you're using the 10-minute resin, which again you can pick up at ravehomecollection.com, or you can pick up the modeling material there as well, or the molds, they pop right out. And as long as you're using them right away, even the resin, they're very bendy and flexible when they're, 20, 30 minutes out. And if they sit overnight, you're not going to be able to mold them around the pot like that, but as long as you're doing it fairly quickly. I'm just kind of trying to figure out how I want it to line up. And off to the next one. You notice when I need some, I'm just pulling off little bits and pieces, and then you just sort of push and shove it down into all the little crevices, smooth it out on the back, slap some glue on. You can have them overlapping, you can have them raised, so don't feel like it has to just be a flat surface. I'm working on a lily flower pot right now, and I have them really overlapping. You can kind of see they're overlapping there a little bit, but you can really make them climb and do things. It's really fun. It's a fun thing to work with. So now that I have all of that on, really, this is not time lapse. This is not like I've waited an hour for all of this to dry. I have just about finished the pot here with all of the molds, and I am gonna start painting it. And honestly, the painting is gonna help me kind of keep it in check. And I'm gonna start off with some chalk paste. I love the chalk paste because it's like chalk paint, but it's a lot thicker. And so you can kind of create ridges with it and sort of lumps with it. And really what I wanted this to kind of resemble was the idea that it was more of a clay pot and less of a plastic pot. And so I was using this instead of chalk paint because with that thickness I could really build some layers, and I could have, some rough areas that it wasn't going to be slick like the plastic pot was. I'm basically using this to create some texture. And it's got that lined surface, so we're still gonna see that. And like I said, this is gonna crack and it's gonna chip because I opted to use the modeling material instead of resin or hot glue or something. But I still want that depth of texture in this piece. So I'm gonna go ahead and layer some chalk paste all around it. I've been doing this a lot too with picture frames. Not the frames, but the art, like buying old art and then using the chalk paste as almost creating like a fresco look or what have you with it on there. So you'll probably see a video of that. I love chalk paste. I think it is definitely an underrated material. Oh, you probably hear my dogs in the background. Sorry about that. I have my son and his wife and their two little ones staying here, and they have a dog. And anytime a squirrel runs across the yard, the dogs bark, and it's a little crazy around here these days. Now I am ready to paint. I'm going to use Bungalow 47 Metal Roof. Bungalow paint is a combination of chalk and clay. So I've created texture with the chalk paste. And now I am just going to use the Bungalow in sort of a similar color, but slightly different. And I've kind of stayed in the putty families because, again, I want this to have a little bit more of a cement concrete kind of look at the end of it. And in case you're asking, no, I did not paint the inside or the bottom of the pot. You certainly could if you wanted to really keep that look cohesive, but I figured that there would be Spanish moss or something covering it, some kind of thing that would cover any dirt or what have you. I'm not likely to put real plants in here, so you're not really going to see much of that. And I wasn't, you can kind of see, I wasn't trying to layer this perfectly. I wanted some of that chalk paste to still be seen. And again, I'm using this every bit as much to create depth and texture. So I'm really using that small brush to push it in to those little layers that are, you can see all the detail of the molds. Now, of course, if I'd used a bigger brush, we could have been through this in no time, but I wasn't looking for full coverage. I really was looking for like a streaky coverage. And now I'm coming in with a darker color of the Bungalow 47, and I'm really kind of smearing this all over and adding some water, because what I'm going to try and do is get kind of a drippy, aged look in some of this. If you were using another paint, you could use dark wax to do this. If this were going to be inside, I know this is probably going to go on the back porch, so I don't really want to use wax because I find that wax can be sticky with dirt and dust. And now I'm just going to use a rag and just sort of dab some of that water off. And what I'm trying to do is just layer it out. So back and forth with the colors, and I really want some of that dark to really build into those flowers. I want to use that to create some depth and age look to it. I like it when things are chippy and cracky and they really look like they've been sitting around forever. This probably isn't my best faux work ever, but for something that's going to be sitting on my back porch, I am really happy with it. And again, this is the dollar store flower pot, and I am going to turn it into something that I'm pretty happy to have, you know, at my own home, and that I know will last for years and years, as opposed to something that's going to be like one season disposable. Using the heat gun just to sort of dry it off, because I'm using the modeling material and I'm adding a lot of water here, things are getting a little bit spongy, and I don't want them to. I don't want to start having my flowers get mushy, basically. So I'm trying to, since I've added so much water to this with the spraying and dabbing and the paint and the layers and layers, I'm trying to kind of dry it out a little bit, so before I go on to the next step, that I don't have sort of a soppy wet or squishy material going on. I want it to be dry as I move on to the next step. And I have some water and some paint, and by just feathering it out, I'm gonna, you know, continue to work it around. I love that runny drippiness. It really does end up making it feel like it's been sitting on the porch for years, not like I just stuck it there. And it's funny because when you have really nice bright things, you want to clean them off constantly, but because I love old chippy, and if they get dirty and dusty, it doesn't bother me. I mean, obviously I don't want dirt around my house, even on the back porch, but I don't quite notice when there's something, you know, when it's gotten too dusty out there or what have you. I don't feel the need to constantly maintain the back porch and get it all clean and dusted off, because the things I like are already sort of rusty and chippy, and if there's a little dirt or dust, it's not quite as obvious. It probably allows me to be a little more lax with some of the chores than I should be. Uh-oh, I think you can hear my grandbaby crying in the background. It is probably getting to be his dinner time. Unfortunately, I am not the feeder-in-chief, so we're good here. But you can hear a little bit of the chaos of my house these days. And you can kind of see some of that old look coming through to the sides. And the truth be told, you know, if you didn't want to use the Bungalow 47, you could probably do this with acrylic paint. In the end, it's going to matter how you seal it more than anything. So any kind of paint would probably work on this. And here you kind of get a good idea of the chippy, runny look that I got. To me, it looks like it's something that's been sitting out there for a couple years, not something that, you know, just kind of happened. And here I'm going to use some clear Tough Coat from Fusion. I just happen to have this small sample bottle. We just started carrying Fusion, and when I ordered the opening package, they sent me this little tiny tester, and so of course I'm going to use it. But I'm really happy with how things are coming along, and I've got my Klingon brush. You've probably heard me say a billion times now. I love, love, love the Klingon brushes because they basically clean themselves. You rinse them until they look clear, the water looks clear, and then, you know, that always means there's more paint up in the bristles, up in the ferrule area, and basically the way they're constructed when they're sitting in water, they pull paint through them and they sort of clean themselves. So I love that feature. I chose Fusion versus another top coat because it is really water repellent, and I know that because I've sealed a lot of stuff on my outside. I actually have painted my pool diving board and slide with Fusion paint to create sort of a Caribbean look in my backyard. So I know how water resistant the Fusion paint is, and again, I've said this is gonna have dirt around it, and I want it to clean, but I want it to look old, but I don't want it to be dirty. So I'm gonna be able to clean this really easily. And my back porch is open to some elements. It's a screened-in porch, so if it gets humid out there, which it does in Florida, then I don't worry about all that. So I'm just drying this so that you can kind of see better. And sometimes the drying helps to crack the clay a little bit, the modeling material a little bit. And so there is my finished product after drying for a few weeks. You can see that it's got some really nice chippy